He stood at my door with his head slightly bowed, hands tucked into the pockets of his coat like a boy again. His voice was small, hesitant. "Hi, Mom. I was wondering if we could talk." I looked at him through the storm door, barely believing it was real. His face had not changed much. Still handsome, still sharp, but thinner somehow. Older. Life had etched itself across his eyes, and not kindly. Behind him, the street was slick from rain. Drops collected on his shoulders like he had stood there for a while, unsure whether to knock. I had not seen him in almost 3 years. Not since he told me I was toxic, that he needed space, that she had shown him how to set boundaries. That woman, his wife now, the one who came into our lives with a smile and slowly pushed me out with a knife sheathed in sweetness. And now he was back. But this time, I was not the mother he left behind. Because when your only child turns his back on you and then dares to return, you learn how to make sure he never forgets what he threw away. My name is Eleanor Maddox. I am 61 years old. And 3 years ago, my son Benjamin walked out of my life, for good, or so he claimed. He met someone. A woman named Vanessa. Bright, charming, polished on the surface. But underneath, she was poison wrapped in pearls. The kind that makes herself look like a savior while slowly turning you into the problem. Within 6 months, he stopped calling. Within a year, he changed his number. I found out through a neighbor that he got married. No invitation. No explanation. Just silence. And now, after all this time, after the damage and distance, he has come back. He says he wants to talk. To reconnect. To start fresh. But I am not the same woman he ghosted. I buried the mother he abandoned. Now I will show him what it feels like to lose something he thought would always be there. I raised Benjamin on my own from the time he was 6. His father, Thomas, left one October morning and never looked back. I still remember the way Benjamin stood in the driveway, watching the back of that car disappear, his little hand gripping the sleeve of my sweater. From that day forward, it was just the two of us. I worked as a school librarian in a small-town district where I knew nearly every child's name. It did not pay much, but it kept us fed and together. At night, I read him bedtime stories, voices and all. He loved when I did the pirates. And on weekends, we would drive to the lake and throw breadcrumbs at ducks. He always counted them, made sure each one got some. He was that kind of child. Thoughtful, tender. A quiet soul with deep eyes and the kind of mind that always seemed 2 steps ahead. I gave him everything I had. Not just materially, but emotionally. I was there for every play, every scraped knee, every moment of doubt. When he got into university, the first in our family, I cried for 3 days straight. I packed his bags, framed his acceptance letter, and whispered in his ear as he boarded the train, "Do not forget where you came from." For a long time, he did not. He called me every week. Came home for holidays. Even sent postcards from internships. When he landed a job in the city, he brought me out to dinner and said, "Mom, I would not be here without you." I remember that night so clearly. I wore a navy dress with pearl buttons. He insisted on paying the bill. I told him I was proud, and I meant it with everything in me. He was my greatest joy. My quiet reason for getting up each day. And then, she entered the picture. Vanessa was polished. That was my first impression. Expensive perfume. Immaculate nails. The kind of woman who knew how to walk into a room and make it hers. Benjamin brought her home for Christmas. I tried to welcome her. I really did. She was pleasant at first. Curious about the house. Asking about old photos. Laughing at stories I told, though never with her eyes. She offered to help with the dishes, then spent 20 minutes checking her phone by the sink. But I brushed it off. She was young. Ambitious. New. At dinner, I caught her glancing sideways every time Benjamin laughed at my jokes. I saw the stiffness in her shoulders when he reached to hold my hand across the table. She was watching him, measuring him. And soon enough, She started changing him. It was slow, subtle. A shift in tone here. A small correction there. Suddenly, Benjamin was too busy to visit for my birthday. Then he stopped calling on Sundays. When I asked if everything was all right, he said I was too involved. That I needed boundaries. Vanessa's favorite word. I swallowed it. Told myself this was a phase. That love changes people, but never the bond between mother and child. But love, as I learned, can also rewrite a person if the author is clever enough. The next Thanksgiving, he sent a card. No return address. No phone number. Just a signature, Ben. Not Benjamin. Just Ben. I sat at the table alone that year, 2 full place settings untouched, the turkey barely carved. I waited for a call that never came. Friends asked gently if I had seen him lately. I lied. Said he was traveling for work. I cried in the pantry so no one would hear. Still, I did not give up. I sent holiday cards, birthday gifts, emails that went unanswered. I even mailed him a small photo album, pictures of him as a boy, us at the lake, one of him sleeping in my lap with a crayon still in hand. I received no reply. A year later, I found out through a former coworker that he had gotten married. The ceremony was small, she said. Elegant. Private. No family present, she thought, but then again, maybe just not the kind of family that gets invited anymore. My knees buckled when I hung up. I stared at the old photo album on my desk and finally understood. He had not just chosen her. He had erased me. I spent weeks afterward moving through life like a shadow. I stopped baking. I stopped playing music in the house. The laughter I once carried like a gift became something I wore only in public, never meaning it. At some point, I stopped saying his name aloud. I still kept the house tidy, the guest room made up, though no one ever stayed. But I never stopped hoping, even when it hurt, even when I told myself to move on. Because a mother's love, real love, does not vanish. It waits in silence, even when it has no promise of return. And then, 3 years after the last goodbye, he came back. With rain on his shoulders. With regret in his eyes. And with her, nowhere in sight. I did not open the door right away. I stood behind the screen, staring at the man who used to be my son. Not the boy who held my hand crossing the street. Not the young man who once cried in my arms after a breakup. This was someone new. Someone older, wearier, thinner, like something had hollowed him out from the inside. Rain clung to his hair. His jacket was creased. His eyes, once so certain, darted like he was unsure how to exist on my doorstep. Still, I did not move. He shifted his weight, cleared his throat, tried again. Please, Mom. I know I do not deserve it. But can we talk? The words hung between us, heavy and strange. I could still hear the echo of his last message to me, the one where he said I was overbearing, that I refused to grow, that I was holding him back. The last thing he ever gave me was silence. And yet, I opened the door, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to hear the truth. He stepped inside slowly, glancing around like the house might reject him. The guest room door was closed. The photo wall was mostly bare now. I had taken most of it down 2 Christmases ago, after crying through a tin of cookies and a bottle of sherry alone. He sat on the edge of the armchair. His hands trembled slightly. I left her. 3 words. Just like that. I blinked. He continued, his voice low. I thought she was helping me set boundaries. That she was healing me. But she was isolating me. From everyone. From you. He paused. Then looked up. She made me believe you were controlling. That your love was too much. She said you used guilt. But now, I see that was her. I watched him. Not answering. Not rescuing. For once, I let the silence stretch. I have not spoken to anyone in weeks, he said. No friends. No one from work. I do not even know where half my things are. She kept them when I moved out. There it was. A hint of the truth. He did not come back because he missed me. He came back because he had nowhere else to go. Still, he sat there, waiting for me to take him in again. To hug him. Forgive him. Patch the pieces like I always did. I did not. Instead, I asked, "What do you want from me, Ben?" He flinched at the name. I saw it. A flicker of something between shame and longing. "I want a relationship," he said. "I want to fix things." Now that she was gone. Now that his world had collapsed. Now that I was the last door still unlocked. I offered him tea. Not affection. Not yet. And as I stood at the kettle, watching the steam rise, I made a quiet promise to myself. He would not get the mother he left behind. Not the open arms. Not the soft heart. If he wanted back in, he would have to earn every inch of the ground he had scorched. Because I was no longer the woman who waited in silence. I was the woman who remembered everything. The first week after Benjamin came back, he stayed at a nearby motel. That was my choice. He offered to sleep on the couch. Said he missed the old creak in the floorboards, the smell of lemon polish. But I could not let him back into my home, not like that. Not yet. Instead, he came by each morning. We shared tea. Spoke cautiously. Like strangers meeting after years of war, unsure whether we were truly safe. He told me about the isolation. How Vanessa slowly separated him from his friends. How she would mock his phone calls to me, reading his messages over his shoulder, deleting some before he could send them. "She said she was protecting me from you," he whispered. But it was always about control. He looked genuinely ashamed. Part of me believed him. Another part remembered the way he ignored my letters, discarded my gifts, and vanished without saying goodbye. "I thought I was making my own choices," he said. But I was just following her rules. Each morning, he lingered a little longer. He brought me groceries. Washed the windows without asking. He even noticed the old garden statue he used to love, the little frog prince with a chipped crown, and smiled like it still meant something. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the warmth of it. The hope. The softness of what once was. But I also saw something else. He never said sorry. Not truly. Not once. The second beat came quietly. One evening, I found Benjamin sitting in the backyard under the oak tree. The same place where he once played with his plastic dinosaurs. His coat was draped around his shoulders like a shield. The air smelled of damp earth and distant rain. He looked small. "I have been thinking," he said, "about selling the condo. Moving back here. Maybe even starting over in town." He glanced at me as if waiting for applause. But something in me froze. Move back? Live here? As if nothing happened? I asked him gently, why now? He hesitated. Picked at the seam of his coat. "I do not have much left," he said. "She handled most of the finances. I signed things I did not read. Trusted her too much. It all slipped away. There it was. The truth behind the reunion. He needed stability. A roof. A familiar name. And I was that name. He was not just seeking forgiveness. He was seeking rescue. Again. I remembered every time I had dropped everything to help him, the last-minute rent in college, the hospital bill he could not pay, the broken heart I stayed up all night to comfort. And I remembered how easily he tossed me aside once Vanessa decided I was inconvenient. He had loved me until someone told him not to. He had needed me until he thought he never would again. Now he was circling back, hoping the door was still open. But I had changed the locks. I smiled, but inside I began to plan. The final beat arrived wrapped in sweetness. On a Wednesday afternoon, Benjamin brought over a box of old belongings from his condo. Books. Photographs. A few items I had given him as a child. "I thought maybe we could go through these together," he said. He wanted to remember who he used to be. He wanted me to remember, too. We sat on the living room floor, flipping through worn pages and creased memories. There was a drawing he made in first grade, us holding hands beneath a crooked rainbow. My eyes welled up before I could stop them. "See," he said softly. "We were always close." That was the trap. He wanted to rebuild on nostalgia. paint over the fractures with childhood echoes. But I had lived through the silence, through the birthdays alone, the Christmas mornings with one empty chair. He turned to me, suddenly serious. I want to come home, Mom. Not visit. Not reconnect. Live. Here. With me. He reached for my hand. Held it gently. I felt the weight of it all, the past, the longing, the desperation. But also, the expectation. He still believed I would say yes. He still believed I was the same woman who would give without asking why. And that is when I knew. He did not come back to heal. He came back because he thought I was still waiting. But I was not. I squeezed his hand once and let go, because the next part of this story would be mine to tell and mine to end. The next morning I rose early. I opened the curtains before the sun had fully cleared the hills and stood in the pale golden light of my kitchen, the same place where I had once packed Benjamin's lunch, kissed his forehead, and waved from the porch as he ran for the bus. I no longer lived in that version of the past, but I still knew how to navigate its shadows. I brewed tea, set the table for two, laid out a warm plate of scones I had made the night before. When Benjamin arrived, he looked relaxed, confident. He smiled when he saw the food. It reminded him of childhood, I could tell. He probably thought I was softening, preparing the ground for his return. I let him talk. I let him reminisce. He showed me a list he had drawn up of ways to contribute to the house. Mow the lawn. Organize the garage. Fix the back step. It was all so easy in his mind. He still believed he could slide back into my life like a bookmark into a story he had abandoned. I nodded along. And then, when he had finished his tea, I excused myself and returned with a folder. Cream-colored. Thick. His name was typed neatly on the tab. Before we go any further, I said, placing it in front of him, I need you to read this. He opened it slowly, confused. Inside were 3 pages. The first, a notarized document transferring limited tenancy rights to him, with strict conditions. No co-ownership. No legal claim to the house. The second, a financial disclosure showing all utilities, property taxes, and grocery costs he would be expected to share, itemized in full. The third, a personal contract handwritten by me, outlining emotional terms, respect, transparency, and most of all, boundaries. At the bottom of that page, I had written, "If you ever ghost me again, you do not get to come back. This home has space for love, not for silence." He read it all. His expression changed slowly, like clouds overtaking a sky. "This feels transactional," he said at last. I met his gaze. Calm. Steady. "So did your absence." He looked away, rubbed the back of his neck. I thought we could rebuild from trust." "No," I said, "you thought I would make it easy." That was the moment. The one where it clicked. He realized I had not made space for him out of weakness. I had made boundaries out of strength. I was not denying him shelter. I was denying him entitlement. And that was the true revenge, not loud or cruel, but undeniable. He came expecting unconditional welcome. Instead, he found terms. He wanted to slide back into a life he abandoned. Instead, he had to earn his way in like a tenant, not a prince. And when I placed a pen beside the contract, I told him simply, "You are welcome here, but only if you understand that I am not the mother you walked out on." He hesitated, swallowed hard, and then he signed. No applause, no tears, just a quiet signature and a silence heavier than any apology. I stood and collected the folder, filed it away in my cabinet beside the mortgage and the deed. As I returned, he looked at me differently. The way you look at someone who has stopped asking to be loved and instead begun to require it. He helped with dishes that morning, left before lunch. I watched him walk down the steps. He glanced back once, like he was checking to see if I had softened. I had not. I watched him drive away with the same measured calm I had learned over years of absence. This was not about revenge in the traditional sense. It was about balance. about weight being returned to the hands that had carried too much for too long. I did not slam the door. I simply closed it. Softly, but with the finality of someone who had just finished writing the last chapter of a long, aching book. It has been just over a year since Benjamin returned. The seasons have come full circle. The garden out back has bloomed twice now, wild violets overtaking the corner beds the way they used to when he was small. The same frog statue, a chipped, weather-worn, and quietly loyal, still rests beneath the oak tree. I have stopped trying to scrub off the moss. Some things are meant to carry time in their bones. Benjamin did not move in. Not because I pushed him away, but because, this time, he saw the cost of returning. He lives in a modest apartment above the bakery in town. It is nothing fancy, one window, creaky floorboards, and a narrow staircase that always seems to collect dust. But it is his. And he pays the rent on time, even when money is tight. I know because he told me without shame. That in itself is new. We see each other more now than we did for years. Sometimes he brings flowers, not expensive ones, just hand-picked from the market. Sometimes he brings silence, which I no longer find threatening. I serve tea. He washes the cups. We talk, slowly, carefully, like two people learning a new language built from fragments of an old one. He never asks to stay overnight. He never assumes there is space for him in the life he once discarded. And I never remind him of what he did. Not because I forgot, but because I finally stopped bleeding from it. I do not forgive in the fairy tale sense of the word. I do not pretend it never happened. But I have let go of the need to carry the betrayal like a burning coal in my hand, hoping it might warm me. It never did. It only burned. What Benjamin did when he vanished, it tore something out of me. Not just the silence, but the way he made me feel invisible in my own story. Like I was a chapter he had outgrown. And then, when everything around him crumbled, he came back looking for the comfort he once called suffocating. But this time, I did not open my arms. I opened terms. And when he signed them without complaint, without expectation, something shifted. Not in him. In me. For the first time in my life, I chose to be the version of myself that was not only a mother. I chose to be a woman with rules. With needs. With a life that deserved respect, not by default, but by intention. The truth is, Benjamin has changed. Not completely. People rarely do. But he is softened in the right ways. Sharpened in others. He speaks less with defense now and more with reflection. He no longer blames everything on her. He sees the role he played, the cowardice of silence, the convenience of absence. He told me once, with tears in his eyes, that he was scared if he came back and I opened the door too quickly, he would fall into old habits. That part of him hoped I would be strong enough to make him earn it. I smiled. And I said nothing, because he was right. As for Vanessa, I hear whispers. That she left town. That her next relationship fell apart. That she still posts carefully curated photos pretending everything is perfect. But I do not search for her. I do not name her in my mind anymore. She was never the real wound. Just the scalpel. The wound was my son's choice to forget me. And now, the healing is my choice to remember myself. I have repainted the hallway. Hung new pictures. Started volunteering again at the community center, helping women learn to use computers and write resumes. I laugh more often, not because everything is fine, but because I have stopped waiting for it to be. Some days, when I pass his childhood room, I still pause. Not to ache. Just to honor what was. And to be grateful that I no longer live in the past he once abandoned me in. Because here is the truth. Revenge, for someone like me, was never about hurting him. It was about making space for my dignity. About saying, you cannot walk back into this house like you never left. It was about refusing to be the woman who simply waits, always open, always bleeding. Now I am something else. Solid. Soft, still, but no longer shapeless. So, if you have ever been left behind, cut off, discarded like an old coat, and if one day the doorbell rings, ask yourself, are you ready to welcome them back? Or are you ready to become the kind of woman who chooses peace over pain, even if it means closing the door gently once and for all?